there! Did you know that my joints dislocate several times a day? I know, it just sounds delightful, doesn't it? I mean, it's not really delightful, it kind of hurts a lot. But anyway, we're going to talk about hypermobility today because it is Hypermobility Awareness Month. Also, if you're new here, hello, my name is Sydney. I am disabled, autistic, and gay, and I dress vintage, and I write songs. So, if any of those things bring you joy, or spark your interest, or spark joy and bring you interest, feel free to subscribe, or don't. That's also cool. No pressure. None at all. Now, before we begin, I just want to say that I'm not a doctor because we're going to talk about medical stuff today, and you should 100% not think that I'm a doctor because I am just a 19-year-old psychology student. That being said, it's also important to acknowledge that hypermobility is often not diagnosed by doctors for systemic reasons that we'll talk about later, but I just wanted to let you know before we got started. So, first step, what is hypermobility? In this case, I'm going to be specifically talking about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So EDS is a hypermobile connective tissue disorder, aka the tissue that holds your body together is extra stretchy. So it can do stuff that traditionally connective tissue does not. So that means stretch your muscles, stretch your skin, and dislocating joints. Also, some other stuff that we won't go into today, but it's just a whole time. And if you have the chance to experience chronic dislocations, don't take it. I don't recommend. But anyway, there are many different types of EDS, the most common one being hypermobile EDS or HEDS, though most EDS types are technically hypermobility, so the choice of terms here does confuse me. If you know, please explain. But anyway, HEDS is the only kind of EDS without a known genetic marker, and it makes up 80 to 90% of cases. And it is directly connected to autism, which I really hope you're not surprised about at this point, because literally everything I talk about is, in one way or another, connected to autism. But anyway, time for sciencey things. I actually read some scientific papers for this one. Basically, the general gist of the research is that neurotypical mothers with HEDS are just as likely to have autistic children as autistic mothers. And as a whole, autistic people are more likely to have HEDS and are twice as likely to have chronic pain in comparison to the general population. Now, this research is fairly recent and ongoing, so there's not a whole lot more than that at the moment, but many scientists theorize that a HEDS brain and an autistic brain are formed very similarly in the womb, especially because the psychological comorbidities between HEDS and autism are an almost identical list. Scientists are hoping that in the future, EDS can be used to help diagnose autism and vice versa. And in my experience, most of the people that I know with EDS didn't know they had it until they were diagnosed with autism and joined the community and learned about it. Another similarity between autism and EDS is that doctors don't like to diagnose it, despite all of the really obvious traits. First of all, it is more common in people assigned female at birth, and we all know how the medical system is stacked against AFAB people. And second of all, it is more common in autistic people. We all know how the medical system doesn't listen to autistic people. And since autistic people are more likely to be in the queer community, that adds a whole nother layer of discrimination. And it doesn't help that HEDS, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't have a genetic marker. Also, for those of you lucky enough to not know what it's like to try to get a diagnosis for chronic pain, doctors have a hard time believing that you're actually able to endure the amount of pain that you say that you're experiencing, especially when it comes to EDS. Because, I mean, you can walk into the doctor's office and say, yeah, my wrists dislocate like 6 times a day, or, yeah, no, I'm super nauseous and dizzy all the time. And they have a tendency to think that you wouldn't be able to function if that was really happening to you, and then not take us seriously, which is really annoying because, again, to anybody living with chronic illness, we try really, really hard to look like we're feeling fine when everything is just physically falling apart. It's honestly a great skill, but it's also not super helpful. Anyway, because of that, and because doctors have been taught to think that EDS is super incredibly rare, they have a hard time believing patients and helping them to get the supports that they need to live a better life. I just love the medical establishment, don't you? Anyway, despite what the world may have you believe, I am not technically hypermobile, but I have gone through this whole process of attempting to get diagnosed, and I've had doctors not believe me that dislocations were happening. And when you're in that kind of pain, I cannot express how upsetting and overwhelming it is to have a group of medical professionals tell you that the pain that you're feeling isn't real. So to anybody who's in that position, I'm so incredibly sorry. I'm here with you, and your pain is totally, totally valid. But if you're wondering my lack of hypermobility, I guess. It's a direct result of dietary issues. If you've been watching my videos a while, you'll know that last spring my gut just like completely shut down and I stopped digesting food for about 6 months, and when that happens you lose a good bit of weight and your joints decide that they just don't want to work anymore because they're too weak. So my joints were dislocating dozens of times a day, sheerly out of muscle weakness, and nobody could explain why, and no matter how much food I ate it didn't get better, and I was convinced that I had EDS because autism, but nobody believed me, and it was kind of the worst experience. Once I was able to go on the FODMAP diet and then gain some weight back, I suddenly had the energy to go on walks and actually use my joints more than I had in the past, and slowly they started to strengthen so they dislocate a lot less. AKA they hurt most of the time rather than all the time to a point of needing to duct tape my body together. But anytime that I eat something I'm intolerant of, or my digestion gets wonky for a couple days, or even if I simply didn't eat enough the day before, they hurt super bad again. I don't know why this is a thing that my body does or why it decided that it wants to continue doing it. I've been told that over time, as my gut heals and I'm able to exercise, maybe that it'll probably get better at some point in the next like 5 to 10 years, but that's really far out. But anyway, I had never heard about this being a side effect of severe IBS, and everybody in the autism community talks about EDS being the only hypermobile thing, so I thought that I would just share my experience with you as well if that can help you in some way. Most people that I know lump me into the EDS group anyway because my symptoms are almost identical even though the cause behind it is different. Not to mention that in a lot of situations it's so much easier to just say, yeah, I have hypermobility problems, rather than describe yet, yeah, I'm malnourished, but like I'm also 100% okay, so like don't worry, but like I don't know if it'll get better. So it's just so much easier. But anyway, that is my story. Happy Hypermobility Awareness Month to those who are hypermobile and those who are technically not but have similar joint pain and don't have your own awareness month. That I don't know. Anyway, you're cool. Knees are the absolute worst creation in the world. I have a song about it. I should record that sometime. Anyway, if you need some duct tape to put yourself back together, I used to hoard it in middle school and I think I still have it in a bag somewhere, so just let me know and I got you. But anyway, if you want to hear about EDS from people who actually technically do have it, the lovely Jessica Cochran-Fozard has some stuff on it, as well as Stevie Bobby and a few others. So I will include links to all of their channels in the description, and I will also include some of my resources for whenever you might feel like spontaneously reading a scientific paper. I'm not judging. Do what you want. I support you. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. Remember that your story isn't over. It has only just begun, and I will see you in the next one.